Well, Michael Clark here from the road trip, and this is what you call the morning after when it comes to things Cadillac. We're here at the Shangri-La Hotel in downtown Toronto. I've kicked away most of the cigarette butts and the debris. I even had to move the cover that was here over the car out of the way to introduce you to the 2014 Cadillac CTS. Now, I got to tell you, I've never liked you. There's just something about you that has really bothered me when it came to styling. I think it was the whole arts and sciences thing. That it was interesting when it started, but then you just got way too angular on me. And an angular equates to angry, and that's why, to be quite honest, I didn't like you for very long. But now something's happened with this next generation, and it seems as though you've finally grown into your styling. In fact, it seems a lot less arts and sciences, and something that evokes a lot of the classic styling that I like about Cadillac. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to drive you. I'm probably going to drive you pretty hard, and I'm going to see if I like you. Now, I've already heard that you've got some really cool powertrains that are coming out, especially the 3.6-liter twin turbo. And that's the type of powertrain that needs to occur for a car like you. It has to be that European-esque type of Nürburgring, sexy, it's something that's just simply not another big honkin' V8. I don't mind when you're in CTS V-trim, but I like this V-Sport idea that I've been hearing about. You want me to talk to the people now? Okay, so anyway, we're going to be testing the Cadillac CTS today here on the road trip out in Ontario, and we might even stop in and show you some Cadillacs that will completely blow your mind.
Well, art and science has always been the genesis or the foundation for CTS. And in the first generation CTS, it was groundbreaking for us. And it was a car that really turned heads. Somebody looked and said, that's a great looking car. And it did very, very well for us. It reestablished Cadillac as somebody that wanted to take chances and come up with designs that were truly awe-inspiring. And that car did very well for us. The second generation was, again, a tremendous evolution from the first one, carrying on with the art and science design philosophy, languages, if you will. Designers like to talk in language, design language, and art and science was their language. Very angular, very faceted, lots of jewelry on the car, and again, a wonderful car for us. But it was designed to cover too much territory, to cover too many competitive brands. It was in between, dimensionally between a 3 Series BMW and a 5 Series BMW. Now we have the third generation CTS, which is perfect size for the segment we're trying to appeal to, which is basically the same dimensions as a BMW 5 Series. Again, carrying on with that art and science theme, design language, but longer, lower, and leaner. It looks less heavy. It looks like what it should be, which is a very, very light car. This car is 200 pounds lighter than its closest competitors. A monumental undertaking for General Motors and for Cadillac. It is literally 400 pounds lighter than the previous generation. That's two great big guys we took out material from the previous generation to this generation. Now, that translates into everything. The basis of everything in a car comes down to weight. With a lower weight, you obviously get better fuel economy. You're moving less mass, less force, less fuel. You can tune the vehicle more precisely now with the fact that you know that it's lighter. It stops better. It starts better. It turns better. You haven't got inertia taking it around the corner, the big sway anymore. On top of that, we have gone to great lengths to give this car the utmost level of luxury. And luxury is a very qualitative term. What is luxury? Well, it's very difficult to define what luxury is. You can tell what you think is luxury, but it's very difficult to put in terms what somebody else is going to appreciate. We have done everything we can with this car to make sure it is the most luxurious car in the market. Every surface, every touch point in the car is of the finest materials. If we say it's aluminum, it's aluminum. If we say it's carbon fiber, it's actual genuine carbon fiber. If it's wood, it's wood. Every feature in the car, cut and sewed, hand cut and sewed leather, French seams on every surface. Everything you look at was done with the greatest attention to detail. Again, trying to say, listen, this is a luxury vehicle. You should have this level of detail all around you. Every component, every little tiniest thing was taken into account and come out with this vehicle. We have to establish ourselves once again as the standard of the world.
No other mark of identification speaks so clearly of the product that bears it as does the famous Cadillac V and Crest. Here, it adorns the hood of the 1955 Cadillac. This magnificent new Cadillac presents truly thrilling beauty in every detail and from every angle. Inside, you see luxury and graciousness with modern fabrics and unusual beauty of appointments. And on the road, Cadillac's masterful 250 horsepower engine, its incredibly smooth hydromatic drive, and its advanced power steering provide the finest performance in Cadillac history. Truly, the Cadillac V and Crest have never before represented so much in quality and beauty and performance as for 1955. See it today at your Cadillac dealers.
Well, when they say over $50,000, you can be as much over $50,000 as you want. And that's why we're looking at the Cadillac CTS V Sport Edition. Now, V Sport means that under the hood, we've got the 3.6 liter mil twin turbochargers. What does that mean for performance? About 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. Now remember, V Sport is not the same as a CTS V class. We hope to hear about those at a later date. But for those who are looking for a practical everyday driver with some of the most beautiful Cadillac-inspired cues from the House of Art and Science, I have to admit, it's not something that I've really liked over the last couple of generations, but I think they got it right with number 3.
So in the case of the Cadillac Q, we've done a few things. We've gotten 3 different ways of interfacing with the system. Voice, using voice commands that can activate a lot of the key features that customers would want, like using making a phone call, or even doing a navigation, accessing the radio. In addition to that, we also have the touch interface on the screen, which even though it's there and it's got a lot of functionality and a lot of really cool features like the haptic touch, as well as the on approach, reveal on approach feature, whereas you put your hand towards the screen, the key things that you want to use as functions light up. So we have those two features, as well as we have the steering wheel controls, where a customer, without taking their eyes off the road, can interact with the system using the steering wheel controls. Now, when you talk about being the standard, a lot of what people don't appreciate is, even though everybody can say they have the same technologies, it's really not the technology itself, but how it's integrated in the car and how it's used by a customer. And that's what makes our systems a lot different than some of the other systems that are out there. And let me give you an example. When you've connected your device, or a number of devices to the vehicle, all of which have music on it, our system will take all the music from all the devices, sort them all, and allow you to access all of it through voice commands, which is something that a lot of the other systems don't allow you to do. As well, things like once you've had your vehicle paired to the system on the Bluetooth side, not only now do you have the ability to access your phone book, but new for the 2014, you have the ability to access your voice system on your phone. So if you have an iPhone, you have Siri, or you have an Android with one of their voice systems, you can now access some of those features in your vehicle, again, without having to interact with your device. So if you want to use Siri to update your calendar or even tell you what your next appointment is, that's something that you can do now very simply without accessing your device.
Well, one of our stops on the Cadillac CTS Drive Tour has been near London, Ontario, and I'm joined now by Steve Plunkett from the Fleetwood Auto Salon, and I would have to say, if there was ever a better caretaker of the standard of the world, it has to be you. Steve, I want to thank you for joining us on the road trip.
Thank you for coming.
Now, Steve, inside we got to see an incredible collection of vehicles going back to the time of the V16s, and incredible technology that Cadillac was known for. In fact, technology that people think has been only around for a few years, Cadillac was actually playing with back in the 1920s and 30s.
Innovations with Cadillac go back right back to 1902, as a matter of fact. There's no car company on the planet, in my opinion, that has introduced more firsts and innovations than General Motors. And a lot of those innovations have come through Cadillac, many through Buick or Oldsmobile, but largely Cadillac. And even my 1907 Cadillac has a safety feature that was very important of the day. And it just went on and on, right up to computers in cars today were a first with Cadillac. Digital fuel injection was a first with Cadillac in late 75, and so on.
And I think one of the most favorite of mine for technology was the innovation that reduced the amount of cylinders, and that's something that we're seeing on a lot of modern cars today. The ability to have active fuel management on General Motors vehicles and drop from 8 to 4, and getting some really good economy too.
The Cadillac brought that out in 1981 for 1 year only. I had 3 of them, and they were a powerful engine. You couldn't kill that engine, but the computers at that time, I'm told, didn't have the capacity to analyze that much data at the time, and it was problematic in that the engine was always searching up and down and up and down. A lot of people just snipped the wire, and it became an 8-cylinder permanently. And we put about 340,000 miles on one of those engines. They're tremendous, but now they have the capability to handle that.
Well, Steve, one of the favorite stories that my mother tells was the days when she worked for General Motors in the 1950s, and she spoke of Motorama, and there's a certain glimmer in her eye that happens, and we're actually standing in front of one of the vehicles that was so incredible that over hundreds of thousands of people actually clamored in to see the first Coupe de Ville.
Well, what you're standing in front of here is actually the oldest surviving Motorama dream car, the very first Coupe de Ville, 1949. It was premiered at the January 49 show called Transportation Unlimited at the time, which eventually morphed into the Motorama shows. And this is not only the first Coupe de Ville, it's the first car with one-piece curved windshield, first car with wheel well trim, front and back. It's the first car with power vent windows. It has a two-way shortwave telephone. It's really a spectacular car.
Now, we understand that the vehicle through its life was actually used by a GM executive and eventually made its way to the hands of his former secretary.
That's right. After the two shows, both New York and Detroit, C.E. Wilson, president of General Motors, he drove the car as a daily driver right up to about 1953. Then he retired and went to the U.S. military, and he gave the car to his secretary. And she retired, took the car, and moved to California. And that's pretty much where the car disappeared after that.
Now, I understand that the engine itself here is a very unique telling of what numbers matching is, in the sense that it may have the right serial number, but it's actually been refreshed later on in the 1950s.
That's part of the story of the car. It's quite amusing. In 1957, she wore the original engine out over in California. So she obviously had enough clout at GM, so they sent her a whole new engine. It was a 57 Eldorado engine with two 4-barrel carburetors, the Batwing air cleaner, 57 Eldorado transmission, and a power steering kit and a power brake kit. These cars didn't have power steering or brakes at that time. And before the engine left GM Detroit, they stamped it with the original VIN number. So as I say, it's a numbers matching incorrect engine, which is quite a novelty.
I'll say it is. And also the other thing that needs to be pointed out with this vehicle is how long it is, because it's actually built on something other than a car chassis.
It's built on a limo chassis, as a matter of fact, so it's way longer than the production Coupe de Ville, and all the extra length is in the back end. And the rear quarters, they used 4 rear fenders to make the 2 long fenders here. So a lot of coach work went into this. The roof is built from 3 big steel panels, and we figure that the car started its life as a 48 convertible because the cowl braces are right there still down in the floor, and the big window well back there is there where the top would have folded in. So it's that was the donor car originally that they modified heavily.
Now, when you take a look at the coach building techniques that were used by so many different companies, obviously for General Motors, we think of Fleetwood, we think of Body by Fisher, but there was so much wood involved in traditional coach building, and while a lot of that was starting to go by the wayside for general cars as of the 1930s into the late 1930s, there's actually quite a bit of wood in this particular 1949 Coupe de Ville.
There is, as a matter of fact. All around the rear window is plywood for upholstery work. The rear deck underneath, just ahead of the trunk lid, is all plywood and ashwood. The rear quarter right here, where the door meets the rear quarter, is a great big piece of ashwood. And when we took the lead out, the original lead out, we could see all the slot screws going right down to the rocker panel there. And in fact, the interior, because again, it's a one-off car, there's a lot of wood components. The rear armrests are completely made of wood and plywood, all rounded and shaped and everything in a carpentry shop and upholstered in the leather. And then the top of the door panels of the doors here, they have an ashwood cap, as a matter of fact, upholstered in leather. Quite a bit.
Now, when I think of leathers and I think of different interior swatches that were used on these vehicles, it never ceases to amaze me how many bolts of cloth are still left. But when it comes to leather, it's not something that was really kept around in rolls. It also degrades over time. So to get the hides back to what they need to be, you pretty much have to start from scratch. And I don't think there was any 1948-ish cows around to help you out.
The Eagle Ottawa in Ottawa, Michigan, has been a leather supplier to GM and Ford forever. They go back to the horse and buggy days. And they supplied the leather to this car when it was new, as a matter of fact. And because GM found all the files on this car with all the specs, we actually had the color numbers and everything. And they actually they prepared 8 hides and colored them in the same manner. I guess it's different today, but they prepared 8 hides in the same manner that they would have back then. So the leather is an exact duplicate of what it was originally.
There's also things inside that we don't think about seeing on newer vehicles, but did exist in later Cadillacs. And most importantly, the things that could make sure that that special someone sitting next to you looked their best when they pulled up to the Waldorf Astoria.
1957 and 8 Eldorado Bromes had what we call vanity items. Lipstick holder, perfume atomizer of Fabergé, a makeup case with beveled mirror and a powder puff and so on. And I thought the 57 and 8 Bromes were the first. This car has all that in the back armrest, and unbelievably, it's all still there.
Well, that's fantastic to see these types of vehicles not only preserved, but also all these ancillary items that went along with them. Now, I have to admit, there's one Cadillac that kind of speaks a little bit to what we've seen here today with CTS, and I think it was one of the most pivotal cars for a grand departure from design. Do you have a 67 Eldorado in the collection?
I sure do, with 10,000 original miles.
I think we should go take a look at it.
Okay.
Well, Steve, you didn't disappoint, and you have an incredible 1967 Cadillac Eldorado here. And I think it's important that people realize that as technology goes, not too many people were thinking about front-wheel drive in 1967, unless you were maybe Citroën.
Well, you're right. This is the first Eldorado with front-wheel drive. Toronado pioneered that for North America. And this is the first time also Eldorado got its own body. Prior to that, they were always gussied up Coupe de Villes.
And that's the thing that people need to remember. And when you think about 1967 for a departure from the typical Cadillac styling, also really the renaissance for me as to when the personal car really came into being, that personal coupe. This was the car of the banker. This was the car of the doctor. These were the professionals present to themselves, I guess is the best way to say it.
You could say that. They're very, very stylish. And this car actually looks up to date right into the 1970s. The styling is just exceptional, and the rear quarter comes back to a knife edge on a 45-degree angle, and very cool looking cars.
Now, this one is equipped, of course, with the Cadillac 425 cubic inch V8. And interesting to note, too, that the offset style of the wheels, because it was a front-wheel drive vehicle, gave it a signature look. Not to mention the fact that we're dealing with drum brakes all around.
Oh, yeah, drum brakes. I'm not sure when the disc brakes came in as an option, but it would be around this time.
Now, you had an interesting story that was told to you by people on the engineering side from Cadillac as to why there was so much engine bay on the Eldorado.
Well, the hood is very, very long on these cars. And I was told that they were R&Ding a 12-cylinder engine, a V12 for these cars. And it wasn't until I was doing one of my tours where I had 3 Cadillac engineers from Detroit. And this was their era. And they confirmed they were the guys research and developing and dynoing and blowing up these V12 engines for this car. But at that time, the oil there were problems with the oil and embargoes and all that sort of thing, and pricing. And anyway, GM canned that program and just went to a regular V8. But it was all set up for a V12.
Well, can you imagine to have, of course, a 12-cylinder and a car that, well, at one point in history went as high as 16 cylinders. Now, if people are interested in finding out more about the Fleetwood Auto Salon, what's the best way to do it?
Probably the website. It's the car show website, www.fleetwoodcountrycruisein.com.
Well, fantastic. Steve Plunkett, want to thank you once again for having the road trip here at your property and showing off some incredible Cadillacs on this Cadillac CTS event.
It was fun. I enjoyed every minute of it.
The new CTS comes with three powertrains. The base engine, which is a 2-liter turbo, producing 272 horsepower, which is a wonderful, very refined engine, producing more than enough power for almost everybody. Available in an all-wheel drive and a rear-wheel drive with a 6-speed automatic transmission. From there, you can step up to a 3.6-liter, which produces 321 horsepower. Again, available in all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive. But this time you move into an 8-speed automatic transmission when you get into the rear-wheel drive. Again, all-wheel and rear-wheel, very, very crucial for the Canadian market. Snow, ice, what have you, very crucial. A wonderful, very refined powertrain. The new surprise is the 3.6-liter twin turbo, producing 420 horsepower and 430 foot-pounds of torque. For those that feel the need to go from 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds, an outstanding powertrain. Highly recommended given the opportunity. A wonderful car. Again, available in an 8-speed transmission. 8-speed transmissions are, this is our introduction of an 8-speed transmission into Cadillac in this car. Very refined, offers the high level of luxury that a Cadillac customer would expect, any luxury customer would expect at this level.
Hello, friends. Loud and Fast here. You know, every business needs a leader, and the leader in the automotive information business in Manitoba is The Road Trip on Shaw TV. On The Road Trip, they talk about all kinds of cars. Sporty cars, like this Chevrolet Corvette with bucket seats and FM radio, this Toyota Camry Hybrid, which is practical and reliable, as well as even trucks. Trucks for work, trucks for play. Even classics like this 1966 Chevrolet Nova with power steering. So tune into The Road Trip on Shaw TV and keep the shiny side up and the rubber side down.
Our television lens back to the wheel of fashion, we greet the new Cadillac, standard of the world. Here is, frankly, an exercise in elegance by America's oldest builder of luxury cars. This is General Motors' finest. Refinement and beauty in every line. The power contained in its V-type 8-cylinder engine occupied 12 years of painstaking research and design. Rare materials and almost forgotten craft art, combined with the expenditure of thousands of dollars, went into the production of this sleek example of automotive splendor.
But with all its luxury, beauty, and refinement, the mighty heart of this splendid new Cadillac beats quietly under the hood. 160 horsepower contained in a compact engine of valve and head design, delivering longer life and increased fuel economy. Once again, Cadillac has given the world a motor car supreme, in keeping with its 45-year tradition of seeking always for the ultimate. From the upswept rear fender to the gleaming massive bumper, this masterpiece is a delight to milady's eye.